You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So we've got an Only in Seattle one here. Only in Seattle. Ballard encampment, homeless encampment, fire breaks out as voters drop off ballots at the busiest drop-off center in all of King County. Alrighty then. So do you think those voters were like, who do I vote for? Do I vote for him? Let's see. He's going to handle homeless encampment this way. This person, they're just going to let it run. They're just going to let it, what? There's a fire? Oh my gosh, this is worse than I thought. Check. I don't know. But it can't be good, right? You're going to your voter box. You're doing your civic duty. You've got your vote all squared away, and you're about ready to drop in. You're like, I don't know. Do I even want to come close to that? There's smoke billowing everywhere. I checked out the video on this. It was a big fire. It's just single tent, but it was some black smoke. That nylon in those tents, it just goes up. And you're talking about somebody's home there. Somebody is living in that tent no longer because it burned up. Fortunately, no propane tanks went off. Oftentimes they'll have propane tanks in those tents because you want to be able to cook some warm food. And that's a large portion of why I think a lot of folks are like, yeah, it's just not safe. It's not safe to be people living permanently with these situations where an explosion or a fire can take place. All right, before I jump in on this one, this Only in Seattle storyline, I'll introduce myself. My name's Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I read the news from that perspective. Some might even go as far as saying I'm reasonable. I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but we're going to do this anyway. So Ballard encampment fire breaks out as voters drop off ballots. That's literally what we're doing. This election, voters are making clear that homelessness is their top issue. No matter who they voted for, voters are saying they are unhappy with the city's current homelessness response. Increased crime and homelessness, said Crystal Rutherford, a Seattle voter, about her top concerns. Things with the unhoused people who are in Seattle, having access to equitable housing, said Meena Mahmood, another Seattle voter. All right, equitable housing, I agree. Living in the park, that's a no-go. Next to the Ballard drop box, unhoused neighbors camp just feet away. The drop box is the busiest location in all of King County. Across the street, about 40 more tents line the Ballard Commons. While voters were dropping off ballots on Election Day, an encampment fire erupted around noon. Now, these fires are so common that the Seattle Fire Department has created a new checkbox for fire in encampment. They've literally got a different designation for encampment fire. I think this year, City of Seattle, we're up. Are we going to hit 1,000? I think we're going to hit 1,000. And that can literally mean somebody having a fire, like a fire going in a tent as well. That counts as fire, not just, erupting fire, tent going up in flames or the surrounding building going up in flames, although those kind of things are happening on the regular as well. And like I said, this is why people are like, you know what? We probably just didn't have people, living willy-nilly wherever they want within a park system. Not so much. So we've got DD's son. She did a little tweet. She's from Cairo. This tent fire at the Ballard Commons broke out today as voters were dropping off ballots across the street. No matter who they voted for, every voter I spoke with said the issue most important to them was seeing a change in how the city addresses homelessness. So you've got this park, this city park. You've got tents lining the park. You've got businesses surrounding it. And literally, as you're watching this video, you've got a big plume of, big smoke billowing into the air. It looks like factory smoke. It's dark, dark gray. You've got that going on, but then you've got people walking on the street. It's just an encampment fire. Somebody was living in that tent and they're no longer living in that tent. And, I got to walk my dog and then I got to, do whatever it is I'm doing this afternoon. This is like around noon. This fire breaks out. Meanwhile, back on Earth, people are trying to drop off their ballots in the busiest ballot box of Seattle. I don't know if we should really, should we really go through all the smoke here? What happened? Oh, tent caught on fire. Standard Seattle stuff. That's what we're working with. And yet the voters have said this election, they've clearly gone pro-police, if you are somebody who is coming up with a solution that doesn't make a lot of sense as far as the homelessness, you're not going to get elected. You got to have something more on the ball. Whether the newly elected officials will actually enact and do anything to help, who knows? But we're going to talk about that. Voter Thomas Street says he knows people who are staying at the camp and says seeing the fire break out, particularly on election day, was tough. I think it's tough anytime to see people just living in tents. That's hard for me. And then let alone have them catch on fire. Horrible. It's painful because people here, they need help, Street said. That was a dangerous fire. I saw it when it started, an explosion. All right, so somebody did say it was an explosion, but from what I understand, there were no propane tanks involved, and that's kind of critical. Somebody made a mistake, probably trying to keep warm, he said. All right. Yeah, maybe making some food, probably making some food. It's noon, it's lunchtime, they just got up, whatever. It's been colder here in Seattle, but yesterday was not a particularly cold day, unless they're wet from rain, which could have been a couple of days ago. They're not hunkered down in their igloo of a tent trying to stay warm. There's something else going on. The kids in this neighborhood, they deserve the park, every park. A person should have a roof over their head. There's too much money in this city for this to be happening, Street said. Cairo 7 asked both mayoral candidates about the Ballard Commons camp being right next to a ballot drop box. That's completely unacceptable. That is a prime example of where people need to be moved out of encampments around playground and into housing, and to have a sense of urgency, said Bruce Harrell, Seattle mayoral candidate. Well, when this article came out, he was the candidate. He is the victor. All right, so we've got three major races here. I'll be back to this article. We've got three major races here in Seattle where homelessness and the police issue, meaning we don't have enough damn police to keep the city streets safe. All right, so Bruce Harrell was up 64.9% of the vote to 35% of the vote for Lorena Gonzalez. Now, Lorena Gonzalez was involved in that whole Chop Jazz mess where we wanted to defund the police by 50%. She's gone down that road. And yeah, she lost her mayor candidacy. Not going to be mayor. Bruce Harrell, he's our guy. So we got Seattle mayor as the first race. The second one, and he's basically, so Bruce Harrell's the mayor. Seattle city attorney, we've got Ann Davison, who is pro-police reform and basically anti-defunding the police. We've got her versus Nicole Thomas Kennedy, who is an abolitionist, just basically, get rid of the police, get rid of law and order, get rid of the court system, and we'll work out something else. But in the meantime, just get rid of it, just abolish. So Ann Davison, a Republican, is leading 58.7% to 41.3%, 17-point spread. Another big one. That's a big spread. The third one that's really interesting is Sarah Nelson, Republican. She is the owner of Fremont Brewing. If you remember the podcast I did where somebody had an RV and they were putting the second floor addition on said RV on a public street in Seattle, that was right behind Fremont Brewing. So Sarah Nelson is ahead 60.4% of the vote to Nikita Oliver, who is an activist, defund the police, into all that. She's 39.6% of the vote. So 60% to 39.6, another over 20-point spread. That's where these elections have gone in Seattle. Those are some crazy numbers. There's some other races where things didn't go as well, but you can't win them all, right? But mayor, that's a good start. And that's what Bruce is talking about here. It's completely unacceptable to have this situation going on. Here is what Lorena Gonzalez, the loser of mayor, you can vote in a lot of different ways. The ballot drop box is certainly one way, but the other way is you can just put it in your mailbox. In other words, don't look at the tent on fire because it's only an issue because you're needing to go to your ballot box in the busiest drop box in all of King County. You don't need to go to that ballot box. Just put it in the mail. ignore the tent on fire. That's literally what she said, in so many words. Said Lorena Gonzalez, Seattle mayoral candidate. First thing I'm going to focus on day one is homelessness, she said. What are you going to do? You've already been on the Seattle City Council. What have you been doing there? Yeah, they're there because nobody's done anything. The candidates are both pledging to help the unhoused, though they have dramatically different plans. And that's where I think the folks in Seattle are like, okay, anybody who's currently in office, yeah, not so sure, because this is how we got there, right? Some voters are skeptical of both candidates. They're like, we don't trust any of these people. I'm going to be honest, it was tough. There's a lot of promises. People are tired of promises, Street said, about deciding who to vote for on his ballot. Others are hopeful that their vote will make a positive difference. Having someone who will take Seattle in a better direction than we are in right now, Mahmood said. One tent burned in the fire at the Ballard Commons we're talking about, and no one was hurt. Seattle Fire Department said multiple propane tanks were in the area, but none ignited. One gas can was on fire that fire crews extinguished. All right, so we've got propane tanks in the area. We've got a gas can. We've got said flames. We've got nylon tents. You can see where I'm going with this, right? This is a recipe. It's consistently a recipe for disaster. Because the one thing, I've talked about this a lot. Summit Properties Northwest, one of my companies, is named Summit because I used to do a lot of mountain climbing. When you do mountain climbing and you do a multi-day trip, you're in a tent, you've got a small, tiny little propane stove. One of the big things is don't cook inside of the tent because that nylon and flame combination doesn't end up well. And if you've got, some of that the weatherproofing stuff on your tent, that coating, that really goes up quickly. Not good. Current Mayor Jenny Durkin's office said crews had been conducting extensive outreach work at the Ballard Commons camp. So outreach, that's when they send services out there to, hey, can we get you some help? Can we get you some, help for your addiction, help for your mental problems, get you into housing? Can we do that for you? Can we help you out with that? And they do that consistently before they're going to do a sweep of the area. And so they've been doing that at Commons Camp and in the area over the past 3 weeks. That is an indicator of there's going to be a sweep. That means they're going to come in and clean everybody out, clean out all the tents. 21 people have referred to shelter, including 17 to the New Rosie's tiny house village. The city says there is no date to clear out the camp, but outreach is ongoing and said the camp is a top priority for Seattle. I bet it is. And when you've got exposure like this, which is, I wonder if this will hit any of the other, big podcasters. I don't know. Probably not. Fire in Ballard, busiest drop box. Not exactly national news, but can't you see Fox running a little story on that? Probably. Let's see what Como has to say. That was actually a Cairo article. Como they always have the good stuff. So, Ballard homeless camp fire highlights why businesses and residents want change. Yeah, not good. An explosive fire erupted Ballard Commons project this afternoon on Tuesday. A troubled homeless encampment has taken over the green space for many, many months. In August, violence began mounting at the camp when a woman was shot and several people were assaulted. Now, this happens at all of these encampments, right? Over time, you read enough stories, you're like, okay, yeah, it's going on there too. This was the second dangerous fire since September. It's really sad. Plus, somebody's home is just destroyed, said Jessica Turner, who just moved out of the camp. Turner says she just received temporary housing Monday, but was back at the park visiting friends, as you do, when the fire broke out. It's nice to be out of the rain and stuff, she said. The rain did not hamper the powerful fire. It was raining pretty good here yesterday. That happened around noon. It's one of the many issues, including crime and concern over public safety, causing great concern for businesses and neighbors. Plus, you can't take your kids to the park. You can't really take your dog to the park. You can't use the park the way that it was envisioned when they developed the park, right? Can't do that. You've got this other situation going on that is not conducive to throwing the Frisbee with little Johnny. That doesn't happen, right? You want to go to the park? No. This is so tragic when we've had so many problems, said Tom Malone, who is a local attorney and the chair for the Ratepayer Board at the Ballard Alliance. Malone owns the Ballard Building, which is home to the popular Starbucks on Market Street that has temporarily closed. So I just got through recording that podcast. Starbucks corporate said, we need to do some renovation to this location. They closed it and they basically said it was renovation, but there's safety factors. So how much renovation can you do to make a location safer? Because the minute you step outside of that store, no matter how much renovation has gone on inside, still dealing with the same issues, right? I think they're closing it until the Ballard Commons get swept. That's the reasonable reality that I bring here, right? All right, this is what's going on. So they've been reaching out with services for 3 weeks. That means a sweep is coming. What do you want to bet? A sweep comes like next week or something. And Starbucks in the meantime is like, we've had a lot of threats to our customers and to our employees. Maybe we just tell the public that we're going to do a little remodel. And in fact, we're going to do a little bit of remodel. That wall color over there, that needs a scooch of a change. We're going to change that up. By the time we do that, we're going to paint real slow. We're going to do it Mr. Miyagi style, just paint on. And by the time we're done with that, maybe the camp will be closed and things will miraculously be better and we won't get sued. That's kind of what I'm thinking corporate Starbucks is thinking. But the company says they closed the location for renovation. Nearby businesses believe it shuttered because of safety and security issues with employees and customers. That's not a hard one to call, is it? It's really heartbreaking that they're going on here for the holiday season, said Malone. It's not just Starbucks. Businesses all over the area say they're feeling the impact. Because you've got a homeless encampment, which brings, I don't care how well monitored, how well internally monitored the homeless encampments are, they've always got a certain element that people with kids, people wanting to enjoy a park, don't want to deal with. They just don't want to deal with it. At Scooter's Burgers, business hours have changed in the name of safety, and I've heard about this a lot. So we're closing the store early, sometimes even before 8 p.m. I stopped taking orders just to have the door locked at 8 p.m. and make sure my coworkers are able to leave safely, said the restaurant's manager, who only wants to be identified as Sunny. Businesses all over the area have also hired security to keep staff and customers safe. Many voters who dropped their ballot off at the box across from the park say Seattle's homelessness crisis weighed into their vote. A lot of it has to do with homelessness. Encampments like this, where I live, you don't feel like you can walk anywhere without stepping over trash and needles, maybe a little human feces. The mayor's office says the city has provided shelter and housing to 21 people at the park, but many more remain. I don't see it getting any better until we manage the people moved out of the park, said Malone. The mayor's office says there is no pending date on when the camp is going to be removed, but they say they're actively doing outreach at the park and that they say that will continue. We reached out to Councilmember Dan Strauss, who serves District 6, and we're told that he had no availability to talk with us. Because what's he going to say? Yep, there's a homeless encampment there. Yep, we had a fire. Yep, that's the busiest drop box in all of King County. Uh-huh. Yep. What are you going to do about it? Well, much of the same. So voters in Seattle, they're looking for a little change. And they made that kind of that whole thought, that whole concept pretty well known at the polls yesterday. Will that translate into some of these sweeps happening that a lot of people are like, don't sweep, that's inhumane. All right, but how about businesses having their employees and their customers threatened by the people in the park living in their tents, catching on fire while people are voting? How about that? That's what we're dealing with here. Yeah. Crazy, right? Only in Seattle. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I will catch up with you soon. Until then, stay safe. We'll talk again. Bye for now. forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.